Dear seeker, before we begin, I invite you to pause for just a moment. Take a gentle breath. Feel the quiet presence of this moment. Right now, as you are listening to these words, nothing is asking you to struggle. Nothing is demanding that you fix your life. And yet, for so many of us, the mind is already running, replaying the past, worrying about the future, and quietly telling stories about what could go wrong. Most of our lives are not lived in reality. They are lived in our heads. You may be sitting safely in a room, yet inside you might feel fear. You may be physically fine, yet mentally exhausted. This is because the human mind has an extraordinary power. It can create experiences without them actually happening. It can make you relive old pain. It can make you suffer future events before they arrive. It can even convince you that something is wrong when, in truth, nothing is. Ancient philosophers, spiritual teachers, and modern psychologists all agree on one thing: the majority of human suffering is psychological, not situational. Marcus Aurelius observed that people are disturbed not by things, but by their judgments about things. The Buddha taught that craving and mental attachment are the roots of suffering. And in our time, neuroscience confirms that the brain reacts to imagined threats almost the same way it reacts to real ones. This means that much of what you feel, the anxiety, the heaviness, the tension, is not coming from life itself, but from the stories your mind is telling you about life. In this video, we will gently explore why this happens. We will uncover how the mind creates pain, why imagination feels so real, and how you can step out of unnecessary suffering and return to peace. Not through force, not through denial, but through understanding. Let us walk this path together. Pain is real, but suffering is a story. Dear seeker, let us now look more closely at something subtle but life-changing: the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is unavoidable. To live is to sometimes lose, to be misunderstood, to face disappointment, illness, and change. Even the wisest among us experience pain. But suffering is something very different. Suffering is what happens when the mind takes pain and wraps it in meaning, judgment, and identity. The Buddha taught that pain is the first arrow; it strikes naturally. But suffering is the second arrow, and that one is fired by our own thoughts. Imagine someone speaks harshly to you. That moment of hurt is pain. But when the mind says, "They don't respect me. This always happens. I am not valued," it begins to build a story. That story creates anger, shame, and emotional weight far heavier than the original moment. Eckhart Tolle explains that suffering is created when we mentally resist what is. We want reality to be different, and so we argue with it inside our minds. But reality does not change because we resist it, only our inner experience becomes painful. In modern psychology, this is called rumination, the habit of replaying and analyzing painful events. Studies show that rumination greatly increases anxiety and depression, even when nothing new is happening. So you see, dear seeker, the event may last minutes, but the story can last years. When you begin to notice this, something beautiful happens. You realize that much of your suffering is not imposed by life, it is generated by thought. And if it is generated by thought, it can be softened by awareness. Pain may visit you, but suffering does not have to move in and stay. Understanding this gives you back your power. The future you fear does not exist. Dear seeker, the human mind has an extraordinary ability. It can travel through time. In a single moment, it can leave the present and leap into tomorrow, next year, or even a lifetime ahead. While this ability helps us plan and survive, it is also one of the greatest sources of our suffering. Most of what you fear has not happened. And most of what you fear will never happen. Yet when the mind imagines the future, it does not imagine gently. It imagines in extremes. It predicts rejection, failure, loss, and disaster. This is known in psychology as catastrophizing, the habit of assuming the worst possible outcome and emotionally preparing for it as if it were guaranteed. You may be worrying about a conversation that has not occurred, a decision that has not been made, or a problem that does not yet exist. Still, your body reacts as though the danger is already here. Your heart tightens. Your breath becomes shallow. Your mind becomes restless. But reality has not changed. Only your imagination has. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "Do not let the future trouble you, for you will meet it, if you must, with the same reason that guides you now." In other words, you will have the strength to handle tomorrow when tomorrow arrives. You do not need to suffer it today. When you fear the future, you are not responding to life, you are responding to a mental movie. And like all movies, it can feel real even when it is fiction. Right now, in this moment, you are here. You are breathing. You are alive. And in most moments, this is enough. The future is a thought. The present is real. When you return to the present, much of your fear gently dissolves. The mind mistakes thoughts for facts. Dear seeker, one of the most subtle causes of suffering is not what happens to you, but what you believe about what happens to you. The mind produces thoughts continuously, interpretations, predictions, judgments, and assumptions, yet it presents them as if they are truth. A thought appears such as, "This will go badly," or "I am not enough," or "People cannot be trusted." And because the thought is accompanied by emotion, it feels real. The body reacts. The heart tightens. The mind begins to search for proof. Very quickly, an unexamined thought becomes a lived experience. Byron Katie, in her work Loving What Is, gently reminds us that a thought is only a thought until we believe it. The moment we accept it as fact, we suffer. Modern neuroscience supports this. The brain does not clearly distinguish between something you imagine and something you experience. When you imagine a painful scenario, the same neural pathways light up as if it were actually happening. This is why imagined suffering can feel just as intense as real suffering. You may be worrying about being rejected, but rejection has not occurred. You may feel certain you will fail, but failure has not yet happened. What is happening is that the mind is telling a story, and the body is believing it. This is not because you are weak. It is because you are human. But here is the gentle power you have. You can question your thoughts. You can ask, "Is this absolutely true?" When you pause and observe your thinking instead of being pulled into it, something changes. The thought loosens. The emotional grip softens. And in that space, peace begins to return. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. You are not the voice in your head. Dear seeker, there is a quiet discovery that transforms everything. The voice in your head is not who you are. It is something you have, from the moment you wake up. A stream of thoughts begins, commenting, judging, remembering, predicting. It tells stories about who you are, what others think, and what might go wrong. And because this voice has been with you for so long, you have come to believe it is you. But consider this, if you can hear a thought, then you cannot be that thought. You are the awareness that notices it. Eckhart Tolle describes this as the difference between being lost in thinking and being present. When you are lost in thinking, every story feels real. Every fear feels urgent. But when you step back and simply observe your thoughts, they begin to lose their power over you. Neville Goddard taught that imagination creates emotional reality. Whatever you repeatedly imagine, you begin to feel. And what you feel begins to shape how you live. When the imagination is filled with fear, life feels threatening. When it is filled with calm, life feels kinder. This means your suffering is not caused by the world alone. It is shaped by the inner pictures you carry. You do not need to silence the mind. You do not need to fight it. You only need to stop mistaking it for who you are. When a fearful thought appears, you can gently say, "This is a thought." In that simple recognition, space is created. And in that space, the mind no longer controls you. You are not the storm of thinking. You are the sky in which it moves. And the sky is always at peace. How to end imaginary suffering. Dear seeker, Once you understand how the mind creates unnecessary pain, a natural question arises: how do we step out of it? The answer is not through force or suppression, but through presence. Most suffering exists in two places: the past and the future. The mind replays what has already happened, or it worries about what might happen. But life itself only happens here, in this moment. And in this moment, there is usually far more peace than the mind admits. The Stoics called this returning to what is within your control, your attention, your response, your awareness. Buddhists call it mindfulness, the simple practice of noticing what is happening without judgment. Modern therapists call it grounding, bringing your focus back to the body and the present environment. Different words, same truth. When you notice your thoughts racing, gently shift your attention to your breath. Feel the air enter and leave your body. Feel your feet touching the floor. Feel the simple reality of being here. These sensations anchor you back to the present, where imagined fears cannot survive. You do not need to solve every problem right now. You only need to be here now. When you meet the present moment fully, it often reveals something surprising. It is not nearly as frightening as the stories you were telling about it. The future will come when it comes. The past is already gone. But peace is always available here. Each time you return to the present, you weaken the grip of imaginary suffering. Each moment of awareness is a small liberation. And slowly, gently, the mind learns to rest. Dear seeker, as we come to the end of this journey, I invite you to notice something simple yet profound. You are here. You have been breathing this whole time. Life has been quietly supporting you in every moment, even while your mind was busy creating worries, memories, and imagined futures. This is the quiet miracle we often overlook. You were never meant to carry the weight of every thought you have. The mind produces thousands of them each day, and most of them are not instructions, they are just noise. Yet we take them seriously, we argue with them, we suffer because of them. And in doing so, we forget the peace that is already present beneath them. You do not need to become someone else to be free. You do not need to fix everything about your life. You only need to see clearly what is happening inside you. When you recognize that much of your suffering comes from imagination rather than reality, something softens. The burden begins to lift. Life will still bring challenges. There will still be moments of pain. But when you are no longer adding unnecessary stories to those moments, they pass more quickly, more gently. You become less afraid of your own mind, and more rooted in the quiet strength of the present. So the next time worry appears, pause. Feel your breath. Look around. Ask yourself softly, is there a real problem right now, or just a thought about one? Again and again, this question will guide you back to what is real. And what is real is this: you are alive. You are here. And in this moment, you are already enough. Thank you for walking this path with me.